everybody. We're going to try this again. Welcome to the 8th Annual NHPF Symposium. And if you could all please give your attention to the stage. Oh, I hear quiet. That's fantastic. And here is Shel Schreiberg to begin our evening.
Well, I don't know what she said, but good afternoon, everybody. I am Shel Schreiberg, chair of this year's symposium. I want to thank you all for being part of what's now our 8th annual nonpartisan celebration of our collective work on behalf of affordable housing. Just so you know, and I'm going to talk more about where the money goes and what we do, but this is the 8th year of this event, and collectively you have contributed, and we have raised over $4 million for Operation Pathways, our supportive services program. So I'm very glad to see how many of you recognize us getting together as peers, industry experts, to talk about a really unique industry and an industry event. For me, I've been around this industry. I'm aging in place, I guess, is what you call it. But just to see a lot of old friends and colleagues here, and I'll probably waste some time acknowledging some of them later. The symposium always will continue to benefit Operation Pathways, which is NHP's social services affiliate that provides services in Masser, Maine is 13 states and 32 sites. Before I get a little bit more substantive, I want to start by letting everyone know some good news about Tom Vaccaro, our Senior Vice President and Head of External Affairs. 8 years ago, Dick Burns, our president, who you'll hear from later, and Tom conceived this idea for this symposium, and Tom has really run with it. He's produced annual events. Last week, Tom had some very serious surgery. He can't be here tonight, but we know he's watching, at least I hope he's watching, and we all want to wish him a speedy recovery. I also want to acknowledge Marian Funes, who's done all the work getting this ready. The only thing she did wrong is she didn't do it wrong. She included my high school graduation picture in the program. So I want to, besides Marianne, I want to acknowledge our past board chairman, Ralph Boyd, who's sitting down here, I think. A vice chairman, Sherry Santos West, who I think is here. She didn't probably make her contribution. Okay. Okay. Now, a little bit about NHP. Despite the NHPF used to be, well, it's a nonprofit real estate organization. We develop and preserve sustainable communities, enrich multifamily housing, now some single-family housing for low and moderate income families. NHP currently owns, and it's tough when you write this stuff because you're never sure, owns 60 properties in 16 states and DC and has nearly 10,000 units in our portfolio. They're based in New York and Washington, and we have a staff of about 60 individuals. We acquire, rehabilitate, and develop new affordable housing. We also have a large supportive housing program, which we'll talk about a little later. Now, for those of you who don't know, and for Steve Green, who's arriving late, but he's welcome. This organization is really over 50 years old. I've been familiar with it for about 40. Just so you know, after the first big riots in 1967, Congress established a commission called the Kerner Commission to look at the problems of our cities. And out of that, 30 or 40 large corporations agreed to invest in affordable housing. In 1990, the organization was the stock that they had donated was converted into this organization, a nonprofit. And for the last 15 years, Dick Burns, who you'll hear from a little later, has really turned it into more than just a housing developer. We invest in resident services through Operation Pathways. That's about, we try to encourage in healthy living, we help with their finances. Aging in place is another part of the service. But more than just that, NHP is also, as a developer, we pay attention to social services, but we fashion ourselves as a thought leader. The concept of this symposium, as it developed through really Dick and Tom, was that we do more than just talk about the easy issues in housing, supply, government programs, but we look at challenges, race, crime, health, more than just supply. And I now decide this year is an election year when I was the one who advocated we talk more about politics and government programs, and I realized how wrong I was. Housing, affordable housing, is back on page 1. For the first time, both party platforms talk about it, and it is a major issue. It's the first time it's been a major issue for 25 years. Both candidates talk about it. Some propose different things than others. We won't go into. But why I feel good about what we're going to do here is not try to put it on the issue. Housing is a big issue. 2 days ago when I left San Francisco, I picked up the front page of the paper. You could probably do this anywhere. Homeless is part of the headlines. Democrats divided on rent control. But we're not going to talk about that sort of stuff anymore. So I'm going to turn the program over now. Welcome, enjoy. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Veronica Gonzalez, Development Director of the Midwest at NHP Foundation. I want to thank you all for coming to NHPF's 2024 Symposium, Adapting Affordable Housing to the New Realities. New realities that affect every step of our process, from identifying land or property, financing new or rehab construction, and ensuring resident safety and quality of life.
Thanks, Veronica. I'm Camden Carpenter, Assistant Development Manager at NHPF. No step stool this year, happy to announce. In planning today's program, we began, as we always do, with a national study building on learnings from the prior year, which looked at the future of affordable housing. Please see your entire report in your journal and learn what innovations must be implemented and what barriers must be overcome to continue to provide quality housing people can afford.
Absolutely, and I don't want to go on with the night before acknowledging that we have generous sponsors, and I want to thank them all for their support. You are who keep our vital work alive, and I want to give a special thank you to Meki Adnani, whose devotion to our cause brings in the most sponsorship dollars every year. So thanks again, Meki. Let's get the evening started. Tonight's industry conversation will examine these new realities with experts from the markets in which we build and preserve housing, as well as from a leading academic who models the cities of the future. Now I'd like to welcome our CEO, Dick Burns, who is celebrating his 15th year as CEO of NHPF. 15 years of accomplishments within our organization and our industry, including the creation of this educational thought leadership event. Please welcome Dick Burns to the podium.
Thank you. I actually started right out of high school, and it's the kind of organization that rewards people coming up. Welcome, everybody. We're so delighted you're all here for our 8th symposium. In my 15 years as CEO, one of my proudest accomplishments is the introduction of our mentor program, enabling young minds to learn from our leadership and grow in their current position. In a completely different department, we are seeing the program work every day. Another of our proudest achievements is our annual recognition of lawmakers from each side of the aisle. It's gratifying that in the most divisive world we find ourselves, that we can bring agreement and solidarity. Every year we present our Housing Trailblazer Awards to 2 outstanding representatives. With this election year, scheduling their appearances was a real challenge. Therefore, our first representative, Darren LaHood of Illinois, will appear via video, and Richie Torres will join us in person later in the program. It's an honor to present the NHPF Affordable Housing Trailblazer Award to Representative Darren LaHood. Representative LaHood has demonstrated outstanding leadership in promoting affordable housing solutions through bipartisan efforts and pragmatic policymaking, including the recent bipartisan Preserving Rural Housing Investments Act, which will help reduce housing costs for families and strengthen affordable housing in Illinois. We are proud to recognize Representative LaHood as a true trailblazer in affordable housing. As I said before, he's unable to join us, but he has sent us this video.
Good evening. My name is Darren LaHood, and I represent Illinois' 16th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. I'm sorry I'm unable to attend this year's NHPF Symposium, but I want to thank all of you for your ongoing work in the promotion and investment of affordable housing across the country. And thank you for the honor of receiving this year's Industry Trailblazer Award. My district covers central and northwestern Illinois, including the communities around Peoria, Bloomington Normal, and Rockford. The 16th district is a hub for agriculture, ethanol, nuclear energy, manufacturing, and trade. We also are home to a deep history of proud Republicans like Ronald Reagan, who attended Eureka College, and Ulysses S. Grant, who called Galena, Illinois, home. Housing for low and middle income families and seniors is also vitally important to my district, which is why I chose to get more involved in the affordable housing discussions here in Congress. I'm pleased to have the privilege of being the lead sponsor of the LIHTC Modernization Bill, the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, along with my colleague, Representative Susan DelBene of Washington. The support for this bill has been remarkable. To date, we have been able to garner co-sponsorship from nearly 60% of the House of Representatives, over 250 total co-sponsors. This puts our bill as the most co-sponsored tax bill introduced this Congress. As many of you know, we were able to get 2 of the biggest provisions in the AHCIA, restoring the 12.5% allocation increase and lowering the bond financing threshold, included in the Smith-Wyden tax package that overwhelmingly passed the House earlier this year. It's a shame that DC politics have gotten in the way of helping Americans all across the country, whether it be through the extended business incentives, a reformed child tax credit, or of course the inclusion of our LIHTC provisions in this package. With the inclusion of the 2 LIHTC changes, we can make great progress in addressing the affordable housing crisis head on. I'm hopeful that the Senate will consider the package before the end of this year in the lame duck. But either way, it was a significant first step in getting those provisions included in the first place, and would not have been possible without the overwhelmingly bipartisan support for AHCIA, made possible in part by the advocacy of many of you. Next year is set up to be the, quote, Super Bowl of tax, unquote, with roughly $4.5 trillion in tax policy set to expire. We have made great strides in the affordable housing space this Congress to make sure to make sure that those are included in the conversations next year. But we need to continue working together to educate members and make sure these priorities are part of the final tax product. I look forward to working with you to get all of this done. Thank you again for the Industry Trailblazer Award and for all that you do to advocate for LIHTC and other affordable housing priorities. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dick. It now gives me great pleasure to present our Industry Leader Award to a dear friend and colleague, Paul Sween. Paul is the Senior Managing Partner of Dominium and to Dominium organization itself. I have been familiar with Dominium for a long time. When I used to be important and get invited to speak, I met Jack Safar and Dave Brierton, the founders of Dominion, about 40 years ago. Since then, I've worked with Mark Morehouse. Stand up for us. Mark is the operating head, and Paula Prahl, who's everything government relations, senior policy, everything responsible. Now, Dominium is based in Minnesota, and I don't look it, but I'm a Minnesotan. And Minnesota has always welcomed immigrants. 1,000 years ago, there were the Vikings. Some are still there. My paternal great-grandparents arrived from Lithuania in 1904 and operated a dairy farm at a place called Johnsville, which is now called Blaine. About 25 years ago, I tried to find the site with my father, and we found out it was affordable housing. Mark Morehouse is committed to trying to find out if this was the site that was developed by Dominium. Okay. So Minnesota has had Vikings, my grandparents, Hubert Humphrey, Charles Lindbergh, and now our most recent immigrant, Paul Sween. Paul has been active in the industry since 1981. He joined Dominium in 1989. Since his leadership time, Dominion has grown from 2,700 units to nearly 4,000 and more than 220 properties. We are honoring Paul and the company as an industry leader for more than these numbers, though. Paul is a founding director of the Dominium Foundation, which contributes important housing and social services to its communities, much like Operation Pathways. He's also spearheaded and funded Operation Opportunity Front Door, which provides almost over $2 million in post-secondary scholarship to Dominium residents. So it is with great joy that we welcome Paul Sween to the podium to accept the Industry Award. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm truly honored to be here, and in particular, to be the caliber of the people in this room, both fellow providers of affordable housing, advocates, and all the people who help support the affordable housing industry. So I'm truly excited to be here. Like many of you, effectively, I've grown up in the affordable housing industry. Dominium started in 1972, which was effectively the beginning of the Section 8 program. My involvement came, about 15 years later, and it was mostly associated with LIHTC. I came to Dominium from an effort that I was in a real estate business with my brother, which in the 80s failed. So I'm used to success and I'm used to failure. Most important that I want to leave you with is that I think we all of us here are very engaged in the industry, and we owe a duty to the industry. We should be cautious about protecting our own little niches and recognize that we are stewards of a large amount of money, which the representative is working at helping provide even further resources. So we should take that stewardship very seriously. There are issues that we're facing, and I think of particularly eviction, where it is almost certain that that issue will evolve over the next 5 to 10 years. the current system doesn't work for anybody. I'd like to add that, creativity is important. We need to come up with new methodologies to serve this critical shortage. Additionally, because we make commitments to be involved in these programs for decades, I would encourage each of us to try to take into consideration the downside. And one of the laughs that we have around Dominium is there's one of our counterparties who has stated that he has successfully predicted 10 of the last 2 financial meltdowns. Now, that might be a little too conservative. Finally, I want to leave you with just encouraging us all to become significant stewards of the industry and to think of our obligations. On behalf of myself and everyone at Dominium, I want to thank you once more time for this very kind award. Thank you very much.
Well, he's a special guy in a special company. And partners like Paul are the lifeblood of this organization, and that is always looking toward a brighter future. Now, carrying on our day-to-day operations and our commitment to a brighter future is our president, Eric Price, who I would now like to welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Dick and Shell. As president of NHPF, I have the honor of working with a team of great experience and great youthful exuberance. I have also witnessed firsthand these talented individuals as they create strategies to meet the increasing demands of providing affordable housing that is accessible and affordable. Based on our findings from this year's study, it will continue to take a customized approach encompassing advocacy, new financing options, community partnering, and more to ensure that low and middle income Americans have housing that they can afford. Each year, we are honored to have an illustrious affordable housing experts share their insights with us in ways that we can all act upon when we leave this room. Tonight is no exception. Let me invite our panelists to the stage. And first, David Bowers. David, are you here? You want to? Maybe all three can get closer. Come on up. David is Vice President of the Mid-Atlantic Market and Senior Advisor for the Faith-Based Development Initiative and Enterprise Community Partners. He leads affordable housing efforts in the Mid-Atlantic and advises on faith-based initiatives. His work focuses on community revitalization and sustainable housing solutions. The next panelist I'd like to introduce is Carlos Martin. Carlos, come on up. Carlos is director of the Remodeling Futures program at Harvard University's Joint Center for Housing Studies. He is a housing expert who studies remodeling trends to address affordability. He leads the Remodeling Futures program at Harvard, providing critical insights into housing markets and policies. And the last panelist is David A. Northern Sr. David is president and CEO of the Houston Housing Authority. He leads efforts to expand affordable housing in Houston. He focuses on improving housing opportunities and enhancing community development. And we are also proud to introduce Eva Thibodeau. Eva is NHPF's new director of Permanent Supportive Services, who will moderate this conversation, touching on the new realities that we are all facing when it comes to financing, construction, and resident quality of life. Ava comes from a supportive housing background with different organizations in Houston, and she was even a Symposium awardee herself a couple of years ago. And so we hired you. That was fair. We are thrilled she has joined NHPF. Please welcome Ava. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for the opportunity to help forge NHPF's path forward and really your commitment to service-enriched housing, which is the proven answer to helping residents achieve the kind of life that they desire. I would like to start by thanking NHPF for the important and oftentimes trailblazing work that they do, many times against tremendous odds, to produce vital, affordable housing in 16 different markets and the District of Columbia. My relationship with both Dick and Eric and I think pretty much everyone at NHPF, goes back 6, 7, almost a decade now, and it has resulted in providing service-enriched housing for so many needy individuals and families. And the need continues, as we all well know. Before we begin, we would like to take a moment now to mark the passing earlier this year of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, a very important woman to us in Houston and to the work of affordable housing across the nation. Her daily work incorporated the good fight for affordable housing in not only my hometown, but also David Northern's, where NHPF has created and preserved hundreds of units of affordable housing. Really, her legacy in affordable housing continues to inspire us all long after her. So please join me in honoring her with a brief remembrance.
The low-income tax credit is a magnet to secure investors for them to get tax relief on investing in low-income housing. Tell you that housing is now and has to be our #1 concern for so many individuals, so many Americans who need low and moderate income housing. By bringing elements from the private and public sector together with one mission in mind, NHPF has created avenues for America's working poor, the elderly, and families to obtain quality, affordable housing. But once again, to NHPF, I say congratulations. You're giving opportunities to many families. You're making them whole. May you continue to move mountains, improve lives, and make the dream of home ownership a reality for those who have given up hope. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Enjoy this wonderful evening.
Wow. It is really so gratifying today to use this opportunity to continue Sheila Jackson Lee's important work. So let's get this conversation started. I would like to start out, though, by letting everyone know that this year's survey was guided by conversations that Dick had with NHPF developers and other organization specialists across many disciplines who collectively helped us to identify the 3 new realities that we are broaching here today regarding affordable housing financing, sustainability, and urban crime. So, David Bowers, not Northern.
All these other Davids.
I know, what are we gonna do? What supports or resources are needed to assist the faith community in playing a partnership role in affordable housing production?
Yeah, many thanks, Eva. First, let me thank the NHP Foundation for inviting me here this evening and for hosting this wonderful event, and thank all of you all for being here. So we started a faith-based development initiative at Enterprise 18 years ago, really recognizing the potential impact that the faith community could have with the vast amounts of land that is owned by houses of worship across the country. We talk about bipartisan or nonpartisanship. I tell people whether it's a red state, blue state, purple state, urban, suburban, rural, there are houses of worship everywhere. And so there's what I call radical common sense, right? You have these houses of worship that exist in the midst of a sea of need who are sitting on an underutilized resource. So for many of them, what they need is a combination of connection to intellectual and financial capital, or as I like to call it, dollars and cents with an S. They need help overcoming the information barrier that they have, and I can talk a lot more about that, but to put it in plain speak for you. So I'm a graduate of Howard University School of Divinity, and I tell people that I took Old Testament, New Testament, I took systematic theology, I didn't take Greek, Greek took me, but I also took a course in pastoral counseling where I literally learned how to counsel people who are dying. What I did not get, Ralph, was a class on how to run a pro forma or how to negotiate a land disposition deal. So many clergy and lay leaders are sitting as stewards of these immense resources, but don't understand, don't have a knowing about how to navigate this system that we'll talk more about today. So I know we'll go into more detail, but at a high level, what I'll say is a lot of technical support and information and some catalytic capital in the early stages that can help them make an informed go, no-go decision. And then if they are going to go forward, getting connected to the right kind of resources, which I'm looking forward to talking about more later.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so important. Carlos, on environmental sustainability and doing more with less, how do the newer performance bars of energy efficiency, electrification, and disaster resilience, including insurance, affect the operating costs of affordable housing developers and operators?
That's right. Speaking of more with less, right? Yeah. So thank you, Eva, and thank you, NHP, for inviting us to have be a part of this conversation. I think to answer the question, we have to think about what the original bar was, right, and where we're standing there. And that I'm talking about just basic housing adequacy, basic habitability. And over the last century, we've actually done a much better job in this country, but there is still, we would be remiss if we didn't say that there are still people in this country, particularly very low income renters and Native Americans and African Americans who have double the rates of housing inadequacy in this country. But here's the shining star. Folks like NHP, the assisted affordable housing development community, has been a leader in transforming that. Consistently over the last 40 to 50 years, we've seen assisted housing, multifamily properties perform at a higher physical quality level than their comparable market rate multifamily. So that's a positive sign. You all are leading this. You should applaud yourselves for having addressed that. So now let's go to the next bar, right? And there's a good reason we have these new bars. We have a very different environment, literally, an environmental change and a societal change that is occurring. So let's talk about one of those sides of that coin, of the climate coin, and that's energy. And again, the multifamily, assisted multifamily development community has been at the forefront of pushing change in how we build and how we maintain our homes. The math plays out well, right? Because in many cases, it pays to do more energy efficiency, to electrify, to put renewables in, to digitalize your housing. It pays, what you invest, you get in the back end, right? You get reduced utility costs, and your tenants get reduced utility costs. So it makes a lot of sense as part of your mission. Some of it is because it's written into the building code. Some of it is because it's qualified allocation plan requirements, other funding requirements, but you move the needle on that. And again, the multifamily development community was at the forefront of that. Now the other side of that coin, which is climate adaptation. And there the math isn't quite the same, right? It really was a blessing, I hope you all agree with this, to see Representative Sheila Jackson-Lee, because Sheila Jackson-Lee was also a strong advocate for hurricane recovery after Harvey in 2017 and helped push some of the conversations that we're having about long-term recovery that unfortunately we're still struggling with right now in places like Florida, North Carolina, and Georgia with Hurricane Helene and Milton. So the struggle is real and the struggle continues, how we actually think about this in our multifamily stock. I said the math isn't exactly the same, right? If you look at the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard, we obviously are tracking multifamily property rates as well as the disaster rates. And we're certainly seeing that in 2022, for example, insurance rates for the average multifamily property went up 14%. In 2023, they went up 28%, so twice, double that in 1 year, right? And we're still tracking 2024. So there's a concern here about what we can do in new building in assisted housing, but also how we retrofit to see the equivalent changes that we'd see with energy, right? If you make an energy investment, you expect to pay less, have fewer energy bill, less of a burden in your energy bill. We would like to see the same thing occurring with investments in insurance and resilience, and seeing the equivalent in reduced premiums and broader coverage, and certainly in streamlined claims treatment that multifamily folks are going to be facing and are already facing in places like Florida. I should say we did, I put on a conference with Enterprise Community Partners about a year ago at Brookings, where we talked about disasters and renters and the horror stories that we heard from affordable housing developers in Florida and Louisiana, saying in one case, These are anecdotes, of course. As a researcher, I shy away from these sorts of things, but it was shocking to hear, and certainly there are people in the room who've heard this, that there are people in the multifamily property business who are either leaving the business altogether because they can't afford their insurance, their basic insurance plus their property insurance plus hazard insurance on top of that in places like southeastern Louisiana, certainly now in certain parts of Florida. In other cases, we heard that people were evicting their tenants because it was cheaper for them to pay their business insurance losses than pay their hazard insurance. Wow. So these are horrific stories that we're hearing, and we're going to see these playing out much more strongly. It was about a month ago that I was at a New York Times, it was Climate Week in New York, and New York Times put on an event on climate and housing. And Assistant Acting Secretary Todman from HUD said the million-dollar question really is what we do, how do we resolve the crisis between climate and housing? And I'm in a gazillion rooms with environmental people all the time, where I have to remind them we also have an affordability crisis. We have a housing crisis in this country. And you really can't resolve one without resolving the other, in my mind. So we have IRA to help certainly speed up on the energy side. It would be great to see an IRA for resilience and climate adaptation in this country. Just a reminder, remember Build Back Better was originally supposed to be $180 billion for housing. So we're still waiting on that $180 billion to play out for a lot of the houses in the community. But certainly thinking about how we depoliticize basic things like disaster relief and response, and think about how recovery and long-term mitigation are going to be solutions for our multifamily properties is critical.
Excellent. So much to think about there, Carlos. Appreciate it. David Northern, we are also curious about the effects of urban crime on affordable housing. In what ways is the Houston Housing Authority addressing the challenges, real or perceived, of race and crime by providing affordable housing options?
Well, first, again, I want to say Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was a major supporter of ours. Just recently in Houston, we received the Choice Neighborhood Implementation Award, which is a $50 million grant to revitalize CUNY homes. And so I'm going to start there. Some of the things that we face, not just in Houston, but throughout the nation, is the crime. And I'm going to use Target, and maybe if Target watching, I could be on their next commercial or something. Mm-hmm. But a store like Target, they go to a community and find a community. They look at a market study and say, hey, will people come shop here? So drug dealers, they do the same thing. And so one of the things that we're doing is looking at ways to decrease the density, add more mixed income, spread people out, so the drug dealers and the pimps or whoever won't focus on those communities. Another thing we're looking at is using our intimate domain authority. Getting rid of those stores. We got rid of 3 stores around CUNY homes, which decreased the crime. So a lot of the crime does not come, it's not coming from our property, it's coming to our property. If you look at the crime statistics based on where the people actually live, they're not living in our type of properties. And then other things is working with various communities to allow us to bring affordable housing there. A lot of times, you talk about depoliticizing stuff, affordable housing, public housing, individuals that's black and brown, trying to move in communities, and even individuals that's seniors, low-income individuals. That's a hard fight that we continually fight. So we have to come out and market and message, just like any major store, any major corporation, and help people understand that and a lot of times we use teachers and police officers and emergency workers. I'm talking about the reception at our front desk. They shouldn't have to live in the suburbs to have, affordable housing or their kids going to quality schools. So that messaging needs to change. It's not just those individuals. I've been in housing a long time, and this fight's been continuing. NIMBY, the people not really understanding what we do as housers, and so we have to, build now. We're using defensible spaces, so the crime element won't come. At FATA, I'm the immediate past president of the Public Housing Authority Directors Association, and I believe in getting rid of criminal background checks. Now, some of my industry partners don't believe in that. But I think everybody should have a right to re-entry. You did your time, you should come back. So that's another fight that we have to have. But again, when we talk about crime and race, if we don't allow people to have an opportunity to work and live in quality communities, they're going to continue to commit crime, right? And a lot of times we know the criminal justice system, it's about race. So it's a lot of things that come together that as an organization like the Houston Housing Authority, but as an industry in public housing, that we got to look at and focus on and make some real decisions about how do we feel and what we believe in. Yeah, it's easier. And we talked about insurance. You talked about insurance. In Houston, we deal with wind insurance. And that's something that's really, make us have to fill the gaps when it comes to pro formers in order to make a deal work. But getting back to the basics of it, race, that's a lot of the NIMBY. Right? Crime, it's a lot of NIMBY. Individuals think if individuals of low income or different color live in their communities, the school is going to deteriorate. Crime is going to be high, more police activity, and that's just not the case. I haven't seen the data that show that yet, but a lot of people have that misguided rhetoric and talk about that. And us as housers, we have to come together to help create a different narrative and really market toward that and utilize the real research, the real information, and just think about the future. Again, as I mentioned earlier, when we talk about criminal background checks, during COVID, HUD gave us the opportunity to eliminate some policies. We had waivers to do what we wanted to do. So in Champaign County, Illinois, when I was the CEO there, we got rid of criminal background checks. And our thought was, look, we have family self-sufficiency programs, we have family unification programs. Family unification is the kids getting taken away because the parents may have committed a crime. We try to bring them back together with a voucher. So if they don't, we already know they committed a crime, and we're gonna let them live. Why not the people that just got out of jail? We know they committed a crime, right? So it was like discriminatory in terms of programs, and so we decided to get rid of criminal background checks and encourage our partners. The only ones we had was the major two lifetime sex offender or producing methamphetamines. That's HUD required. And so we talked to our partners, and they allow individuals to move in their properties also that was rehabilitated. And so we as a community just have to come together and eliminate that, again, misguided rhetoric around race and color and individuals that may have committed crimes in the past to eliminate individuals committing crimes today.
Thank you. Absolutely. I really appreciate the in-depth answers to the questions that each of you provided. So I'd like to just open it up to the three of you to continue the conversation. So who would like to start?
Sure. So I'll jump in and just share a little more detail, thank you for that, on the approach with the faith-based development, the faith-based community, because we really do believe there's so much potential there. Just to give you a sense of scale, potential scale. So there's talk about the need for anywhere from you hear numbers of 5, 7, 10, 12 million additional units, more talk about housing supply. The Urban Institute in 2019 looked at 800 parcels owned by houses of worship in just 4 jurisdictions in this metro area. And their rough estimates were that anywhere from 43,000 to 109,000 units could be built on those parcels. That's just in 4 jurisdictions in one area, right? The Turner Center, UC Berkeley, has done analysis about potential in California. More are doing analysis about the potential there. So when we think about public-private partnerships that were outlined in the report that NHP Foundation did, and this notion of creative land use, I really think there's so much potential there. Churches, mosques, synagogues, temples around the country. We've got an approach that we've looked at now where we're doing an offering, a package of offerings that we talk about the goal of increasing housing supply, supporting equitable procurement for BIPOC vendors. We talk about strengthening neighborhood anchor institutions, and also building an enterprise program while nurturing a national movement that includes but is much larger than enterprise. So I'm about to share a model that we hope others will replicate, and they already have started to do that. We're providing 20 hours of a curriculum that teaches clergy and lay leaders the basics around the development process so they can become comfortably conversant. That's number one. Number two, we raise dollars to pay for consultants who can serve as essentially owner's rep in the early stages to help houses of worship think about the go, no-go decision. What might they do? We also raise dollars to pay for market study feasibility analysis. We've got this much land. What is it zoned for? What could we do? What is there an actual demand for? How feasible is it to buy? We've had real-time examples in this area where a congregation owned 7 acres of land, wanted to build senior housing, and the market study came back and said there was an oversupply of senior housing. We want them to make informed go or no-go decisions. We also raise dollars to help pay for the consultants who do the work with them on the navigating the owner's rep, the grant dollars for the studies, the analysis. Then we also pull together bullpens. We've had pastors say, I don't know where to shop for a developer. They don't know about the NHP Foundation. They don't know about some of the other great developers, nonprofit or for-profit, so we gather that information. We're starting now a clergy coaching component so that clergy who have completed projects can coach clergy who are about to embark upon this. right? And we also do a peer learning exchange. I have seen a pastor who controlled a lot of land literally break down in tears in a session with just his peers because of the pressure that was on him. So we're working on these multi-year approaches. The city of Charlotte just put out an RFP. Nashville has just secured money from HUD to support this effort. We've got 11 cohorts going in jurisdictions across the country. We're seeing now more local governments, private foundations, banks, and others putting dollars into this backboning. This process can take 3 years. The discerning, if a house of worship is not ready to do this, may take a year or 2. And then there's, oh, by the way, once you get to the point of selecting a development partner, all the things that come with that. So it could be 5, 7, 10 years, right? But again, when we think about the scale of possibility, people have talked about public land for public good. Think of the faith community. We have had conversations, and I'll wrap with this. 10 years ago, I had a banker say, we can't even say faith-based in the bank. 10 years ago, I had local government officials say, why would we work with them? They don't know what they're doing. But that radical common sense starts to hit in. The most essential element of a real estate development deal is the real estate.
Yep.
Who's sitting on all of this underutilized real estate? In New York, it's air rights. In some of these suburban jurisdictions, we're dealing with congregations now. We're working with 135 around the country who are sitting on 20 or 30 acres of land. We have a collaboration with the Church of God in Christ. They're going to work with 200 congregations around the country, potential to bring, right, we're talking about 20 to 30,000. That's just one denomination, right? The Catholic Church, largest non-government landowner in the world, right? In the world. So I encourage all of us, when we think about creative approaches, there are folks out there who are looking to get that kind of intellectual and financial support that governments, foundations can support. Connect them with the ecosystem of developers, consultants, and others who can help who have competence and integrity. And I really do think it could be a major breakthrough in meeting the supply needs in this country over the next 10, 15 years. But there's got to be an intentionality about it, both within the faith community, but also in the development and the philanthropic and the financing ecosystem.
David, let me add a little bit to that. Just in Houston this past weekend, I participated in a summit of affordable housing and faith, which one of our city council members, who's also the chairperson of housing and affordability for the city. And that's exactly what we talked about, having faith-based organizations understand the land they have and how to really utilize it. And you hit on a lot of points. You should have been there. They would have really got a lot out of that. But one of the biggest points that that we kind of articulated to them is that know your lane, right? You can develop the land. You may not have to be the developer. Be a partner in it. You know, same thing that the housing authority has to do. We have to do a market study and make sure that it works there. Right? And talk to the neighbors, because just because you're a faith-based institution, that don't mean you won't have NIMBY. I can count on both hands how many times that I've had issues with development partnerships with faith-based organizations. I have a couple I'm doing now that we have issues with. So that's a major point. And I know that, you know, some of the conversation that I had was around race, affordability. You know, a lot of programs that we have as a housing authority, the new days, you know, we're dealing with 80-year-old properties. You know, people looking at, over time, HUD traditionally underfunded us in terms of capital needs. And so I mentioned earlier we got a Choice Neighborhood grant, but that's not just about developing housing. It's about, you know, the people, the community, and housing. So it brings that approach all together. And about the people, we look at health, right? We look at safety. We look at education. We look at job training and opportunities like that, which also helps eliminate the crime. And as a community, we come together and create plans in order to develop it. And so that's that major approach that will really help communities that we serve, which is all of our communities. You know, we talk about affordable communities. People look at it as a public housing, but it's not like that no more. They look at housing authorities as just dealing with public housing, but, you know, we're businesses. We're affordable housing developers that also happen to manage property and provide wraparound services for people. And those wraparound services, whether we provide it directly or indirectly, it helps our individuals in terms of income, increasing job training, which also, again, eliminates, you know, that stigma of race and crime when we talk about affordable housing.
And Eva, one other quick thing I'll say too, that approach around faith-based, also veteran services organizations, right? American Legion halls, VFW halls, you have a number of them around the country, again, that may be sitting on underutilized land. There's a development partner here called True Ground, used to be called APA, did a great project right out in Northern Virginia, working with a veteran services organization and taking their underutilized space, right? And kind of doing something that led to affordable housing, some community service space, and, right, an updated hall for the veterans there. So this notion of whether it's working, and we've seen on the policy front, right, now we talk about in California, yes, in God's backyard, and legislation that's been passed in places like Washington State, California, Montgomery County, Maryland, laws that have been introduced but not yet passed in places like New York State, New York City, where people are trying to say, who's got the land? Faith communities, veteran services organizations, universities in some cases, right? What are the ways in which we can look at expediting, right, the ability to unlock the potential in that land? I saw that in the report as well, that the NHP Foundation commissioned, right, this notion of like land use policies and how do we expedite and streamline approvals. So that's another place where the intersection of policy and working with the folks who actually have the land, what is it we need to unlock that potential?
Yeah, what I'm really appreciating, and I'm hearing from all of you, and I want to throw back to you, Carlos, you know, you have this deep industry expertise, and you're looking for ways and actively creating vehicles to translate that into action. And Carlos, did you want to add anything?
Sure. Now I'm feeling bad because I may have been the cause for that pastor crying. Father John.
I'll give him your name, sir. I'll give him your name.
Okay. I shouldn't have said that. But yeah, I mean, certainly every little bit of land that we can find, that we can scrape through in every particularly populated areas, larger urban areas, needs to be found, needs to be developed. There's no question about it. We're 4 million in arrears in housing units in the country just right now. That's just for the current population, not projecting future populations and not projecting a lot of the units that are going to be offline because they're no longer livable, they're no longer habitable. I mean, fortunately, we hope that we invest as a country in places to make sure that they can withstand the hurricanes, the floods, the wildfires, et cetera. But the reality is a lot of these places are going to be uninsurable. They're going to be unlivable. I mean, there are already places in South Louisiana that the water's already up to here, right? It's not, those homes are nobody's going to live in 8 feet of water. So finding every bit of land that we can is absolutely critical.
When we talk about the land also, a lot of school districts, you know, have so many closed schools in different communities, repurposing that land. And even in Houston, you drive around and you see empty mall complexes, you know, where you can look at ways to try to repurpose that land. So as you mentioned, we got to find land where we can find it. Well, while still, you know, allowing the green space to live, and, you know, and be viable, but the units is real. You know, we have a wait list in Houston for our public housing authority that's been closed for years, and I think it's like 18,000 on it now. And the only reason it's 18,000 is that we purged it, and so we lost about 10,000 of the people. Yeah. And it's closed, so think about if it was open, how many more people would be on there. So you talk about hard units and doors that's needed. It's a real thing throughout the country.
The only way we're going to deal with climate change in this country is by housing people.
Yeah.
And that's true in the planet. We can't have a sustainable planet without having economic development opportunities. You can't have a population that's homeless, that has no services, that has no jobs or employment. There has to be a way of addressing these that is very considerate of the green space issues that we have as well.
And Eve, I also wanted to say something about on the resilience side. So when I started Enterprise 20 years ago, we had just kind of started to roll out the Green Community Standard. Enterprise, National Resource, NCRC have been working together around this standard for affordable housing around green building. And I'll never forget an incident where, as we were trying to educate, make aware folks in the industry about the importance of it, how to do it, we were working on the policy front too. And here in Washington, D.C., the city here was one of the first adopters on making building to that standard or similar equivalent required. And we had a developer who came, a good friend, and was essentially cursing us. Damn you, Enterprise, damn, what was the problem? It's gonna cost too much. We can't do this. This is unreasonable. Okay, well, come to find out, they were so upset because of the paint. They couldn't find a vendor who could get them paint that didn't off-gas at a reasonable price. When they said that was the problem, one of our folks said, oh, we know where that vendor is who could get you that at a reasonable price. And they're like, oh, okay, green building, we're in, right? So all it was literally was an information gap. They just didn't know. right? And so the notion of, yes, some things are going to cost more, but even more as the industry has evolved, where green building has just become the norm, the greening of codes, things become, right, they're not niche products, they're just the standard products, costs hopefully come down. Some things, yes, will cost, but it's the if we want healthier, high-performing housing, having to do that. So we've seen that, I think, on the green building side more and more. When it comes also to resilience, right, this notion of what does it mean to build green in terms of healthier and high-performing, what does it mean to build resilience? In a resilient way, shout out to my colleague Laura Searfoss is here at Enterprise. We just started hosting a Mid-Atlantic, a Resilience Academy, bringing together a number of developers from around the region where we're looking at this notion of how can you build in a resilient way. And some of it is just the peer-to-peer sharing, some of it's information from professionals in the industry. But I think we have to be intentional about thinking about from multiple ways. Yes, the production of products, how do we make sure that's happening? But for practitioners, you all who are in the room who may be doing the development, right? It's like, how do we do this? And helping people get connected to the information on how to build in a resilient way, not only why it's important, how do you do it? And sometimes it's at the brass tacks level of where do you go to get fill in the blank, right? Or how do you actually work the financing to make that work? That's the kind of brass tacks work we're going to have to do, in addition to having localities and government incentivize these things through policy and dollars. And I'll just say this, and I'll maybe leave it to my colleagues here to talk about this. There has to be a real conversation about cost, right? I know one of the things looked at in the study was the notion of like creative financing ways. I want to say here on the stage, here publicly, I like sports. I like watching PTI. Pardon the interruption. And Tony Kornheiser has a great line where he always says, whenever they tell you it's not about money, it's about money. So whenever folks will try to say, well, let's get creative and da-da-da-da, at some point, it just costs. Yeah. So I started my professional career working with former U.S. Senator Barbara A. Mikulski. She was the ranking member on the VA HUD Appropriations Subcommittee. And so my first job, I saw the power of appropriations and how the priorities that we have, whether it's as a government, whether it's as a private sector bank, or me as an individual, I put my money where I value things. And so at some level, we have to say when it comes to housing affordability, housing for lower income folks, services, resilience, we have to just call the question, are we willing to invest in it? I'll use a real anecdote, public housing, HUD. Before, a few years ago, there was a report that came out that said the deferred maintenance costs for all public housing in the country might be 50 or 60 billion bucks. And when people would have the conversation and say, well, let's do all the deferred maintenance for public housing. No, we can't do that. That's unrealistic. Oh, we can't do that. God, you're so naive. And then COVID hit. And $1 trillion moved through our economy like that. Why? Because we made a decision as a country that said, we have to do this. That's interesting. I thought a minute ago we didn't have 50 billion. Now we got $1 trillion. Well, that's interesting. So I think at some point when we talk about these priorities and let's get creative, let's be efficient. But at some point, as you call the question, is this important? Serving these people isn't important. Then let's talk about where that money is going to get invested in and make some choices that have to be made whenever we're doing budgets and appropriation.
Now, I'm going to say this, though. I appreciate that comment around deferred maintenance because that's so true. But I'd rather have the money to build today's market of needs for housing versus dealing with trying to repair 80-year-old properties, right? And so I think that's a going between. Yep. Do you need safety? Do you need our clients to live in a safe resident, but also need my seniors to be at an age in place and not have to try to walk up and down stairs? I need larger units. I need, units that's, adaptable to today's market in terms of individuals that have needs. And so I think that's really important, but that was a very great point. And then that's reinvestment. People look at affordable housing and they say, oh, you're taking property off the tax roll. The only way to do affordable housing is to take the property off the tax roll. They never look at the point of what are people that's 30%, 60% AMI, 80% AMI, what do you think they do with the money they save in terms of paying their rent based on their income? They're not investing in stock over in Russia or somewhere else. They're paying their bills. They're shopping at the stores getting better food. Another thing I want to say is this. I think when the Obama administration came out, and I'm from Gary, Indiana, and I worked a lot in the Chicago market in that area for most of my housing career. And so they talked about affirmably furthering fair housing. And it's a good approach. People deserve to live in quality areas, good jobs, schools, transportation, and safety. My approach is fix my area. Don't make me move out there. Put good quality schools in my area. Bring jobs and good foods in my area, right? So that's what we need to look at instead of just focusing on moving people out in the opportunity areas. Let me live where I want to live, but make sure I can live as affordable, safe, with good schools, and my family deserve a right to be there also.
Carlos, did you want to add anything?
Amen.
Yeah.
I would concur. I mean, we look at the investments that we made over the last 4 years, everything from ARA to IIJA and IRA, and we're investing heavily in the basic infrastructure in this country. We forget that housing is infrastructure. I'm quoting our friends at National Income Housing Coalition who say that every time you say hello to them. Housing is our infrastructure. Housing is a critical infrastructure. Everything else wouldn't exist if it weren't for people living in a place. So that needs to be front and center.
Well, I think I'm very impressed with, again, the knowledge that each of you bring, but more so the synergy that happens when we sit here together and listen to a conversation like this, that's talking about, what are our untapped resources? How can we leverage that with resilience as we look into a future that's very uncertain, but certainly chaotic? And, and then include our government partners and really be good stewards of the money that we know we need to invest in this. So thank you, for your insights. I would like to open this now and give our guests here today the opportunity to ask questions of our panelists. We have some folks out here with microphones, I believe, who can take your questions. Some brave soul. No. Oh, we have someone. Okay.
Yep. So the question was, with the faith-based development initiative, how many properties have turned into affordable housing? So I'll speak from the experience we've had at Enterprise of the work we've done. So far, there are about 20 developments in this region that have brought online about 1,800 affordable homes. 400 of those, interestingly enough, were preservation right up on Northwest DC with a house of worship in collaboration with the NHP Foundation. The other 1,400 or so are new production units. When we talk about a projected pipeline, so I mentioned that we're working with 135 congregations and multi-year cohorts in New York, Baltimore City, Montgomery and Prince George's County, Maryland, DC, Atlanta, Miami, Seattle, Houston, San Antonio, and Dallas, multi-year funded cohorts. So those congregations are expected to bring on a projected 9,000. Most of those are rental, though not all. We're seeing more congregations looking into trying to do ownership, right? But most of them also want to maintain control or ownership of the land. Some of them are doing mixed-use projects. Any of you all who are here in Washington, D.C., I'll give you a good example of a TOD mixed-use project. Israel Baptist Church, Eckington neighborhood of Northeast, that a few years ago was recognized as one of the most quickly gentrifying neighborhoods in the country about 5 or 6 years ago. Israel Baptist Church took their parking lot, built a 3-story building. First 2 floors, Unity Healthcare is the anchor tenant, expanded healthcare options in that community. Top floor is a meeting hall banquet space to provide affordable meeting space in that community. Then they bought a little parcel of land right across from the Rhode Island Avenue Metro Station, built an affordable senior development there in partnership. So we're seeing some who are doing more mixed use. Top is housing, ground floor retail, as you see in the industry. And I tell people oftentimes, the developments that will get done are the developments that get done in our industry, right? Typically, congregations aren't trying to do something, spooky or spacey. They're trying to do what you all would do any day. It's just that they own and control the land, and there's all that comes with that. But they're trying to do senior housing. They're doing family rental. They're doing mixed use. Sometimes they're doing facilities work. And in 9.5 out of 10 cases, I want to be clear, they're going to get partnered with an established development partner. So they're not out doing this work themselves. That's part of the work. Get them with a consultant. Get them with a real estate lawyer who's just on their side of the help. help them develop an RFP so they can select a good partner who can work with them, and then they're going to go forth and do the kind of projects that we see in this.
Just adding to that, just briefly, as a housing authority who don't really focus on faith-based housing, but we focus on affordable housing, we have a number of deals with faith-based, either directly or indirectly with a not-for-profit or the church. We actually got a deal now with NHP, Trinity East, right? That deal is part of our Choice neighborhood, and we have other partnerships and other deals. So that's something that's so important. I look at Eric, and we've had a couple ribbon cuttings that we had over the last year or so related to faith-based organizations, and that partnership of public-private partnerships and the housing authority bringing its resources to the table also.
And I encourage folks, I see folks from our DC Housing Finance Agency here, Chris Donald and Michael Durso, and I know, these conversations, be in conversation with your local governments where they reach out to us and say, hey, how can we think about engaging the faith community around ownership and trying to think creatively, right? Is there a way to crack that nut? And so they're different, there may be local priorities, right? It may be senior housing, maybe ownership, whatever it is, and think about how to creatively bring the resources that government has. Same thing if you're in philanthropy. How might you leverage your dollars to play your role, right? Philanthropy might support the backboning. Folks who have investment capital, we talk in terms of if these folks go through a rigorous process over several years, building their capacity, getting a team in place, is there some sweet tea? I like to call it sweet tea capital, right? That maybe gives them better terms on their financing in some form or fashion that helps make the deal work. Because we say they've been doing preparation. We know they've got a solid plan and a project and a solid team. So if you're in the capital markets, right, can you bring something to the table that might help there? So again, in the study that NHP Foundation did, talking about public-private partnerships, we want to think intentionally about how to connect these kinds of dots. And again, whether it's faith-based or veteran serving organizations, the universities who may be trying to do this, I think those are classic examples.
Is there another question? Mary Jane, can you see anyone? It's a little bright.
I don't see any.
Oh, there's
Oh,
one.
we have one. Neil Ratcliffe.
Thank you. Good to see you all. I just came from another meeting earlier today with a whole bunch of representatives of affordable housing developers all over the country, and they were talking about the challenges with increased construction and development costs and skyrocketing insurance costs. So and we had this robust discussion about, it's important to build in a more resilient fashion and to improve the quality of developments. At the same time, every other trinket you add to the tree is increasing the cost of development in an environment where we have this massive affordable housing shortage. So how do you balance the need to keep costs contained with some of the excellent concepts that you're discussing?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, as Acting Secretary Todman would say, right? So there's a reason why each of those trinkets exists. And if the benefit societally is there for that cost to be incurred, there's a legitimate reason for that reason, right? The challenge is when it becomes so burdensome that it becomes impossible to develop at all. In some cases, and let's be clear, we're not just talking about new construction, new building, we're also talking about maintenance and operations of existing buildings, even refinancing of existing multifamily properties. I was just in a conversation, the Joint Center has a policy advisory board, which are 65 of the largest home builders, multifamily developers, product manufacturers in the country. And one multifamily developer, market rate multifamily developer from this area, said, he was working on a deal, and that was a refi deal he was basically holding on with the tips of his fingers because their expectation for what the insurance costs were going to be for just general operations and maintenance were through the roof. To give you some numbers, he said they assume about $800 per unit in insurance costs, in annual insurance costs in the DC area. In Florida, you're looking at up to $2,900 per unit in insurance costs that they were expecting. And so those refis aren't going to pan out either. So when it becomes impossible to live That's the challenge. Now, there are lots of other supply side things that we can do to help reduce the cost of new construction of retrofitting and operations and maintenance, right? I mean, that's part of the reason why IIJA exists and IRA exists, is to improve the R&D. We haven't done enough R&D in the multifamily housing sector. Most of the R&D in this country has been for single family housing, energy efficiency, and we need a lot more on the multifamily side. So things like that can actually help reduce the cost. Then there are also just material supply chain issues. This came through most during the pandemic, right? Where every single product that you can imagine in the construction industry went through the roof. That's partially because we have a globalized supply chain. In many cases, there are tariffs, there were inability to deliver things, so that can have a detrimental effect. But things like that, thinking through, just the way we look for every little acre of property, we have to look for every opportunity to pinch pennies in the development side and the retrofit side. I should note also, clearly, construction workforce is a critical issue. That's been one of the big drivers of a lot of the high costs. We do want to pay our brothers and sisters who work in construction a fair wage. So we have to think about ways to make sure that that community is protected while making sure we have the right skill sets that are available. And certainly a lot of the conversation that's happening now politically around the construction workforce, that need I remind people, the disproportionate number of the construction workforce are foreign-born workers in this country, much more than any other sector, except for agriculture. So we have to be very conscious of the rhetoric that we're using, because we want to make sure that that is something we can talk about, something we can negotiate, a cost that can actually help produce a better product as well.
Thank you.
Another question? Folks out there, I see one right back here. Oh, and one there.
Hi, I guess this is mainly for Carlos, but and anyone can answer for that matter. But one of the questions I have is, you talked about, obviously, recently, we're actually representing Franklin Street, who we handle a lot of the insurance for, NHPF, and we are based in Tampa, so we're firsthand see the events that have happened from Helene and Milton. So how do we depoliticize not only the emergency recovery and everything like that, mitigation, whether it's preventative or post-event, but also kind of how do we engage and incentivize public-private partnerships between insurance companies who sometimes have a negative perception of affordable housing, especially in areas where there's catastrophic exposures from weather and other types of events, whether it be race or crime or whatever it might be. Like, how do we kind of take a step in that direction, right? Rather than saying, hey, we're going to come out and try to punish, but how do we kind of say we're going to do this together?
Yeah. Let me answer the second question first.
And that was kind of a loaded question, but.
There's a big concern around how do we actually think about the investments, the physical investments at the property level, the actual physical risk, right? So much of the challenge that we're having is that we're basing it on some sort of external risk factor for that property, and not really thinking about what's the physical quality of the unit, of the actual building, right? To be able to withstand certain kinds of events. I'm a big believer in thinking that we need to buy time. Like, there aren't communities that should, like we saw this happen in New Orleans after Katrina, right? Where certain members of the federal government went in and said, this whole community shouldn't exist anymore, which is, if you're a black or brown person, you know exactly what that means, right? So the question is, how do we ensure that there's the infrastructure? If it's flood, you could create seawalls, that sort of thing. That's balanced with the physical interventions at the property level unit. Because then it's something an insurer can insure at a reasonable price. It's something that the federal government has invested in terms of the infrastructure protections. It's something that the property owner has invested in terms of the retrofit. So there's a balance there. There's a distribution of risk that has to occur. To answer your first question, I'm speaking on my behalf, not on the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies, but it's been one side that has politicized disaster relief and recovery. Let's be very clear about that.
I'll say something to that point. Whether it's a disaster area or not, when I'm doing affordable housing, I can look next door and see a market rate unit, my insurance is a lot higher, right? And we both have Class A units or properties, so.
Interesting. Yep. Not anything. I think we had another question out there. Yes?
Hello, I'm Mike Rohrbeck from Voice of the People in Chicago, and I just wanted to, this insurance and property taxes thing is just sort of like a nightmare that keeps coming back. You know, I remember from the 90s, they were trying, LISC was trying to push community developers and LIHTC owners to come together in a risk pooling insurance entities. I don't think any of that ever really came off, but maybe we need to think about that as a national push. And the other thing is that the Housing Authority and faith-based institutions know is that property taxes is stuff that we just really can't afford in affordable housing. It just taps out our cash flows, takes money away from what can be resident services. And we should have a national, or I guess it's a question, should we have a national push to just have our properties be property tax exempt? This is a public resource. It's not just a commodity. It's not just a market value thing.
That's all right.
Should we be doing this on a national basis, trying to get property tax exemptions?
Well, in most cases, the housing authority, we own a property, we get tax exemptions. I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but in Texas, it's a policy, it's a legislation called Public Facility Corporations. And with that is that we can partner with a market rate developer. It can be an acquisition where they can take a Class A property, partner with us. We go through a transaction. The housing authority has ownership of the land. We have some type, depending on the type of deal, we may have some general ownership in the property, but we receive fees as partners. Half of those units become affordable. The Houston Housing Authority, we only have affordability at 80 and below. You know, some people look at affordability at 120% AMI. And so we get a lot of pushback related to that. Now in Houston, we have a revenue cap and something's called the revenue law. I mean the Robin Hood law, where schools can only utilize a certain percentage of their property taxes and then they have to share it throughout the state. And the same thing with the city in terms of property taxes. They can only use, for example, 75%, then have to share that out the state. And so when we do public facility corporations or develop any type of affordable housing, we get pushback about the taxes. Well, one, if you want affordable housing, you need a tax break, because that's going to make it affordable. Two, with those laws in place in a city like Houston means that we're doing a tax recapture in the form of affordable housing. So we have a big need, we have a big wait list, we need affordable housing. If we didn't use the tax dollars, if we didn't get a tax breaks, the tax dollars would go, sorry. That shows my trouble, right? If we didn't use the tax breaks in the form of affordable housing, they'll go somewhere else, and our city has a need. So it's about packaging it in the right way, and regardless of how it looks, it's still not going to be sexy to some individuals. That's a question over there.
Oh, the question.
Serious issue these days in our...
The big ouch in the room.
I'll say from a housing authority standpoint, COVID killed us throughout the nation. We still have people that's not paying rent. They still believe they don't have to pay rent. And then a push about making people homeless, right? You know, you have individuals that owe so much rent, and we're a business also. So if you owe the housing authority $800 rent and keep going $1,200, it'll cost me $5,000 to turn a unit around and then have to search for a new client. And I can save money by just eating that rent cost, right? And so that's that approach sometimes you have to really think of, even though to the other person that's paying rent, that's not fair, but still it's a business. And so, but what I want to say is that individuals' delinquency and not paying rents is tough, because even you talk about the rehab costs, the search costs, you talk about the legal costs of evicting somebody, and then in effect you're making a family homeless.
Yeah, I'll say here in Washington, we've seen enterprise. We've seen this in certain jurisdictions, certainly around the country, particularly jurisdictions that have strong protections for tenants. And DC is one of those cities. So this is a city that had for years been really an envy of the nation because of the amount of investment that had been made in affordable housing here. Not as much as is needed, but much more than most cities, and even more so than a lot of states, right? So there had been that history. And then we looked up, and the industry in some ways almost was starting to implode, because you had owner-operators facing pressures from unpaid rent, right? And so you had the struggle of owner-operators dealing with that. You've had financial institutions who were starting to say they would not finance here, or they were starting to price, right, accordingly, right, assuming there'd be much higher economic vacancy. So it's a real issue. I think for us at Enterprise, we and a number of partners have worked together in this city specifically. I'll say to the city council just passed some legislation, emergency legislation around the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, ERAP, but it's really been part of a larger conversation. The Department of Housing here, the RFP that it put out, its annual kind of RFP, that $80 million is targeted now just to essentially provide relief for owner-operators who are having to deal with that challenge, which for that segment, that's helpful. But then you say, well, what about the quote-unquote normal pipeline of production and preservation? It's a real issue, and so I think that where we are trying to communicate a message that says we as an industry have to be very intentional and thoughtful about the balance of the social contract between making sure that residents who live in a property who are by definition that we're serving low income have the supports that they need, right, to try to live their, right, kind of fullness of life, if you would, that they aren't taken advantage of, right, by unscrupulous players, period, next sentence. At the same time, part of that social contract is that folks have to be able to pay some rent, right? You are getting a service, there's a payment there. And sometimes, and fostering a conversation between kind of the owner-operators set and those who may see themselves as more like tenant advocates, legal aid set. At the end of the day, we should all see ourselves in the same business, trying to help folks, right, who happen to be low income, right, live a comfortable right, life, a solid life in safe, decent, affordable housing. And I think there's some unintended consequences that we see when folks and it sounds so cliche in this politicized time, you know, on either side, where there are folks who are like, just get them all out, because all of them ain't doing right. Yeah. And folks on the other side who are essentially like on another extreme, you shouldn't have to pay. Don't pay, don't ever pay. Yeah. And neither are helpful, because we literally have seen folks either sell out of the industry or literally close their doors. So it is a real serious issue, I think, that we have to continue to be intentional about how to address that, and the protections that were put in place, understandably so, with COVID, right? Who saw that? And it's the kind of thing we hope never happens again, but it was an extreme circumstance. Some of the ripple effect of that has led us to where we are. And again, being discerning about those who literally cannot and those who have chosen not to pay. And if we don't discern and distinguish that, we'll end up with a real problems like what we're seeing now, even in a city like where we sit right now.
Absolutely. Are there other questions?
Yeah, I have one. I'm interested to know if you all have seen any innovations relative to job training in the construction industry and training people up.
So I'll talk about that. So the Department of Labor has a program for young people. It's called Youth Build. And years ago, especially in Illinois, it was a not-for-profit that had Youth Build Lake County, and they partnered with the Lake County Housing Authority, and we worked together to train young people from 16 to 24 in construction. And so at that time, I was the president of Lake County Housing Authority and sat on a board for Youth Build. And so a lot of our projects, we will work with Youth Build, train young people. It was an educational program. Most of them, the young people had either been incarcerated or dropped out of high school. The traditional school system couldn't get them where they needed to be, so we worked on it and got them there. I left Lake County and went to Champaign, and I had the bright idea. It was like, hey, instead of having a not-for-profit do it, why don't the Housing Authority apply for Youth Build? So we got Youth Build. And so we wrote it into our plans is that if you get a development deal with us and a project with us, you have to use Youth Build participants, which gave them ready-made opportunities to work, build great resumes. We didn't use a school district related to education or GED training. First of all, we didn't allow them to have GEDs. You had to have a high school diploma. We used Penn Foster. So when we created that whole individual, gave them the job training and the income that was needed, because we were doing development anyway, right? And so we had the deal, we part of the deal, and I used to have to tell some developers who's 51% owner. Okay, so they will get an opportunity to work on this project. And so I think that's one approach that we utilize in order to help young people, but I think that's the same approach that we utilize with our Section 3 workers, our Section 3 businesses. And it's a lot harder sometimes, but that's what we have to do to get people involved, especially people of lower income.
I think what you keep speaking to and what I keep hearing from each of you is, number one, the importance of this conversation and the communication between experts across sectors, but then also the intentionality of taking policy and putting it into practice. And I'm hearing that in each of what you're saying. And I encourage each of you in this room, to use your business sense and your platform to keep repeating these messages. Because at the end of the day, I want everybody to be here to hear this conversation. And unfortunately, they can't be. Is there one last question?
That's actually a good segue to just continue.
Now you in trouble.
David Bowers is controlling the lights. We're knocking down water. I don't know what's going on here. So what we're seeing is the crisis point of a 30-year trend in the construction workforce in this country that's been aging for quite some time. Job openings have been every year going up, with a blip in 2008, obviously because of the recession. So the construction workforce is in a crisis mode. So we're actually seeing great private-based initiatives with a lot of local home builders, local commercial builders who are actually investing in major training programs in their communities, because the kids today don't want to work in construction. So trying to get just anybody interested, but in particular getting African American and women at par with some of the other populations that are overrepresented in the industry is absolutely critical. So there have been great examples in a lot of housing authorities, a lot of youth build, a lot of these job training pre-apprenticeship training programs, but we're actually seeing some pretty major private initiatives surprisingly, with some union apprenticeship programs.
So Youth Build is a pre-apprenticeship program, so that's helpful, especially it was helpful for us in the Midwest, Chicago area.
Yep.
I know there was one more question. I want to say one last thing on that, or add something to that piece. So the notion of intentionality, you're so right, is key. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the importance of connecting dots. So I want to share a quick story about how in Washington, D.C., we started an effort years ago called No Murders, D.C. We were trying to end murder in the city. We started this conversation. One of the topics was around crime. That's one of the things in the report, right? The notion of crime or the perception thereof. So a number of folks in the city were coming and saying, hey, listen, if we just get these youngins some jobs, if they get jobs, they'll be good. So we brought in the gentleman who at the time was the head of the Building and Construction Trades Council in Washington, D.C., a gentleman named Jerry Lozapone. And Jerry came into a meeting at the back of Ben's Chili Bowl, I'll never forget. He said, hey, look, we'd love to have more members, right? Because we're aging out and all the things. Jerry said, we'd love to have more members, get some of these young guys and ladies jobs. He said, but here's what you got to know. Number one, the trades are more technical than they used to be. It's not just kind of like greasy hands. He said, so what does that mean? So now we have to have people from the education world in the conversation, because these folks have to have more technical skills. Number two, Jerry said when they show up, their piss has got to be clean. Now, this was 10, 12 years ago. Some of the laws around marijuana use in particular have changed. But at the end of the day, what that means is now we got to have a conversation with folks who are doing drug treatment, drug counseling. And then the third thing he said is when these folks show up at the job, if your boss checks you, right? If he checks you, your boss, he or she checks you, you can't kirk out on him. You can't cuss your boss out. So now we got to have a soft skills conversation, right? So if you really are, I think it's important to connect dots. The conversation about crime ain't just about crime. The conversation about housing is not just about housing, because there's a workforce possibility there. So oftentimes I think it's important for us to say, what is this vision of what it is we're actually trying to do and how we're trying to serve community? And then what are the interconnected pieces there, and making sure all of those people are not in a war room, but in the peace room, constantly having conversations about what they do ties to what they do, ties to what they do, and how that can help us move the ball forward. Because if we stay in these silos, and it sounds cliche, but it's real, we oftentimes won't get the results we're looking for.
Thank you.
Just one last point before this question. I just wanted to say, part of that Youth Build program and the job training and educational training, when they graduated, we gave them a voucher so they can be sustainable. They won't go back to the streets. They won't be couch surfing. And so it was a intentional program to really help a person move along that spectrum of self-sufficiency.
So I want to move to our last question and keep things moving along before someone kicks me off of here. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Connecting the dot to resident services. Thank you for addressing the new realities, but we still face the old question about having sufficient and sustainable funding for resident services. So any insight as to how we can deal with this ongoing issue?
Oh,
I'll take that.
Ken White.
I'll take that because I see that my name is next on the program, and they told me we have to keep this thing moving. So, my name's Ken White. I'm the executive director of Operation Pathways, which is the affiliate organization of NHP that provides resident services. And NHP's commitment, and I'm going to walk up to the stage. NHP's commitment to resident services is a costly one, and it's costly because in many ways, am I here now? And in many times, we need to have people on site, right, that are providing these resident services, and we call them resident services coordinators. It's a costly commitment, but it's important because it's what keeps people housed. And let's talk about some numbers. So the NHP Foundation commits about $4 million annually to resident services across its portfolio. About 50% of that comes from property operations. That's money that's built into the operating budgets of the properties from rents and subsidies. 15% of it comes from federal grants, foundations, and other philanthropy. And an additional 10% comes from this event tonight, the sponsors from this event tonight. For those of you who are doing the math, that leaves about $1 million that NHP contributes to keep its mission to provide service-enriched affordable housing. But that's $1 million not reinvested into creating and preserving more affordable housing. This is why I always tell investors, if you have a passion for creating and preserving affordable housing, consider investing in the services that keep people housed. The strength of an affordable housing community lies in its ability to offer comprehensive resident services that address the diverse needs of its population. And Operation Pathways provides services to everyone from seniors in St. Louis to families with kids in Connecticut. The common denominator for the success of these programs is our dedicated resident services coordinators who go above and beyond every day to provide resources and supports, hands to hold, shoulders to cry on, and everything in between. Tonight, we are going to highlight the story of one such dedicated RSC making a difference in the lives of residents at Plaza Borinquen, a property in the South Bronx with a close-knit, hard-working population and lively culture. Our short film, Plaza B, A Bronx Tale, provides a glimpse into this culture and some of the struggles the residents face. And now let this short film show you how we provide the comprehensive resident services that ensure residents have access to the tools and resources needed to build a better future for themselves and their families.
With your generosity, you do more than build homes. You build futures. You provide access to education, healthcare, and keep families from facing homelessness. You can help Operation Pathways continue to create brighter futures for thousands of residents. Please donate now to make a difference in the lives of residents at NHPF communities.
The Bronx is beautiful. It's always full of life, it's fun. There's no other borough like it. My name is Karina Molina. I am a resident service coordinator and a family-centered lead coach here at Operation Pathways. Operation Pathways started in 2013 here in this site in Plaza Borinquen, and it just blossomed from there. I advocate a lot for the people here. Operation Pathways, we promote autonomy. We do family center coaching, which basically it's a program to help them set goals and achieve their goals. Every program that is offered by Operation Pathways is resident-led. Kids here in Mount Haven are facing drugs every day, homelessness, and poverty.
Back in 1975, the area was pretty heavy in drugs. As time went by, they cleaned it up, but now the drug dealing is starting up again.
When I first started here in 2021, I had 4 overdoses in 1 year.
My brother-in-law passed away because of an overdose. Me and his son found him. I checked for his pulse and I checked for his breathing, but there was nothing. Seeing someone like that, it's not easy. And it's not a feeling that you forget quickly. Thanks to Operation Pathway and Karina, we have managed to receive CPR and Narcan.
I personally became a Narcan distributor. I had to take courses myself, and then from there, I teach others. Since we've had Narcan on site, out of the 4 years I've been here, only 1 overdose since. What happens with the families is they become more empowered because now they have the right tools to save their loved ones.
If the community comes together, we definitely have a chance of cleaning up this area. This is a way to fight back.
My first introduction to Operation Pathways was when my mother brought me into it for the summer internship.
They learn what they want to accomplish when they get older. They do financial classes. They also learn how to situate goals. They get to work one-on-one with staff from NHP, and they learn what is asset management, property management. One of my past teens got accepted to John Jay. He saw the need in his community.
We were doing an event. It was a CPR training. She had firefighters and policemen here, and I would look at them, talk to the community, and show them ways of how to help each other. I just said in my mind, like, this is meant for me. When I came to Karina and said, I want to go to John Jay, and she was like, you want to be in the police? I said, yes. She got right to it and started researching everything that would help me get to my goal.
What I appreciate about NHPF is the fact that they prioritize resident services. They care about their residents and the communities they serve.
What Operation Pathways has done, it brings the best out of people. It brings out leaders.
So many, like Hector and Marilyn, have exciting opportunities thanks to the support they receive from resident services at communities like Plaza Borinquen. With your generosity, you provide access to education, healthcare, and keep families from facing homelessness. You can help Operation Pathways continue to create brighter futures for thousands of residents. Please donate now to make a difference in the lives of residents at NHPF communities.
I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to some of the people you just saw highlighted in our video. And I'll ask them to stand as I call their name. First, our wonderful Resident Services Coordinator, Karina Molina. And the residents that you saw featured from Plaza Borinquen, Blanco Montalvo, Marilyn Martinez, and Hector Lobo. We thank you for sharing your stories and for giving us a taste of life in this truly wonderful apartment community in the South Bronx, Plaza Borinquen. And I'd also like to thank all of the sponsors who are here tonight, and especially those who have made contributions for multiple years. Thanks to your support, this symposium has raised more than $3 million for Operation Pathways since its inception. We know that many of you are here representing the companies who have helped sponsor this event. But if you feel inspired to make a personal contribution to the great work that Operation Pathways performs, please feel free to point your phones to the QR codes that you see on your tables. They should be on every table, to make a donation now or at any point during the evening, and we thank you all very much.
Before I get started, I just want to, since I got cut off at the end, like a round of applause for that panel. I think they were terrific. After seeing some of the work we do in the Bronx, it's very fitting we can present the NHPF Affordable Housing Trailblazer Award to Representative Richie Torres, who's a lifelong Bronx resident and tireless advocate for affordable housing, who grew up in public housing. As such, he stands as living proof that investment in affordable housing can bring stability and opportunity. His dedication to fighting housing insecurity and homelessness in his hometown district encompassing the Bronx and New York has led to significant legislative efforts, including his work on expanding affordable housing funding and protecting tenant rights. Please join me in congratulating Representative Richie Torres.
Good evening, everyone. It is an honor for me to receive an award from an organization that is dedicated to the proposition that every single American deserves access to safe, decent, affordable housing. You know, for me, affordable housing is not merely brick and mortar, but it's the foundation on which you build a better life for yourself and your family. You know, just like we as a society believe that every child has a right to an education, I hope one day we will come to realize that every child, every family should have access to a safe, decent, affordable home. And we in Congress should follow the golden rule. We should wish for every family the same housing stability that we would want for our own families. I come to you from the Bronx. I know I'm one of two elected officials. The other was a Republican, and I'm often asked, you know, how can you collaborate with Republicans? And I said, well, I'm a Yankees fan. My chief of staff is a Mets fan. So if I can employ a Mets fan, that means I could certainly reach across the aisle and collaborate with Republicans on issues of national importance, like affordable housing. But I stand before you as a testament to the power of affordable housing. My life story is a journey from public housing in the Bronx to the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. I was born and raised in the Bronx. I spent almost all my life in poverty. I was raised by a single mother who had to raise 3 of us on minimum wage, which in the 1990s was $4.25 an hour. And I grew up in public housing, and I would not be where I am today were it not for affordable housing and the stability it gave me and my family. And I would not be here today were it not for my mother. You know, when I knew I was going to become a congressman, I publicly said that before I'm a councilman or a congressman or an elected official, I'm first and foremost the son of my mother, Deborah Bosselet. And for me, there's no greater honor than representing the Bronx because it's full of single mothers like mine who suffer and struggle and sacrifice so that their children and grandchildren can have a fighting chance at the American dream. And it's an honor for me to represent the Bronx because I think of it as the essential borough, the essential county of the United States. You know, during COVID, I saw essential workers who were often paid poverty wages put their lives at risk during the peak of the pandemic so that most Americans could safely shelter in place and safely stay at home. And I feel deeply that we have a moral obligation to make our country affordable to our essential workers. You know, when we house the essential workforce of America, we're not only providing them with a safety net, we're providing a safety net to ourselves. And so I look forward to partnering with each and every one of you and realizing the dream of affordability for more Americans. Thank you for having me. So.
Thank you, Dick. And thank you, Representative Torres, for your unwavering commitment to affordable housing. There will now be a pause in tonight's programming for you to enjoy dinner.
Yeah, I've seen everyone eyeing the breadsticks. We know you're hungry. So please enjoy dinner, and we'll see you in about an hour. Good evening. Hi, everyone. If I could have your attention, can you please start to return to your tables? Thank you. Hello again. So I'd like to take a moment to remind you why we're here tonight. Your support makes a real difference, and now is the perfect time to make that impact even greater. We invite you to open your hearts and wallets and make a donation that will help us continue this vital mission of providing quality, affordable housing that's enriched with resident services. Every contribution, big or small, brings us one step closer to our goal. So we thank you for your generosity and your contributions this evening. Now I'd like to ask Dick Burns, a man as timeless as he is, to join us again and introduce our phenomenal keynote speaker.
Well, we're coming to the last act. And I have to say, we got to sit with Diana during dinner, and she's an amazing person. I think you're really going to enjoy this. On September 2nd, 2013, Diana Nyad demonstrated to the world the power of human spirit when she reached the shores of Key West, Florida, after swimming 52 hours, 54 minutes, 18 seconds, and nearly 111 miles. On that day, at 64 years old, she became the first person to swim from Cuba to Florida without the use of a shark cage. That gives me the chills. Her 30-year career as a sports journalist has made her a compelling storyteller, and her life story has now come to the screen, which I assume a lot of you have seen, on a major motion picture, Nyad, starring Academy Award-nominated actors Annette Bening and Jodie Foster. Now let's learn a little more about Diana's inspirational journey. Please welcome Diana Nyad.
Americans are talking about 64-year-old Diana Nyad.
Swimming more than 100 miles, Cuba to Key West.
First ever to do it. 53 hours, her dream finally come true after 5 tries.
I've met a lot of extraordinary people, and she is one of the ones that has inspired me the most.
Diana
Nyad.
Diana Nyad.
Diana Nyad.
The part of Diana that people can't seem to understand is why would somebody get that close to death? You know, what drives you to get that close to death? And I think that's really where Diana felt alive.
A new film called Naiad. It is based, of course, on the true story of marathon swimmer Diana Naiad.
The story is about the power of the human spirit. What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Richard, I must say, and if you don't mind, I'm going to refer to you as Richard instead of Dick, because during dinner, I heard all the Dick stories, jokes that Richard's been told his whole life. So I'm going to call you Richard. But I wanted to thank you, first of all, not only for having me, but mentioning the 18 seconds, because anybody can swim 52 hours, 54 minutes. It's that last 18 seconds that's going to kill you every time. You know, the truth is, I am a forward-moving person, and I don't want to sit around. This swim was 11 years ago now, even though it was 35 years in trying it. It was a long, sort of epic journey. But I tell you the truth, I don't mind looking at some of the footage, because it doesn't matter how old I get, I will never look that bad again. And just a quick insider story about the movie. How many people have seen the movie, the Naiad movie? Well, great. Thank you. Bonnie and I are honored by it, believe me. But naively, before there was a cast, before there was Netflix and the money for the movie and all that, I went to a friend of mine, big success in the movie business, and I said, Gail, you know, I'm not an actor per se, but I do stand on stage and tell stories and use my parents' accents. Should I screen test to play myself? And she didn't take a beat. She said, well, you only have to ask yourself one question. Do you want anyone to see the movie? I said, well, you don't have to hit me over the head with a hammer. She said, you can go do TED Talks, whatever you want. People go to the movies for movie stars, and did we have two wonderful movie stars? But the truth is, in the subject of looking back, I do look back at that story, because it's not about the triumph, the ego of it that I flash back to. It's the tenets of what it took to get across that difficult ocean. People now have called it the Mount Everest of the Earth's oceans. There is not a more difficult swim. There is no swim that has that sort of litany of Mother Nature on steroids, obstacles out there. Since 1950, the best open water swimmers in the world, men, women, young, strong, fast, had been trying the crossing and had never made it. And what it took more than anything were those words that I spoke on the beach when I got out. And they're words that resonate. They resonate with people from around the world. Bonnie and I hear from people from China, from Chile, people who are battling cancer, people who have been diagnosed with Parkinson's, people who want to write the novel they always said they would write. And the words are, never, ever give up. I'm thinking of you all, like just listening to you, Richard, at dinner. It touched me so much to hear all the success you've had in private equity and whatnot, but now to be in this world where the bottom line is not the goal. Now the goal is help. How many, we talk about the homeless situation, tragedy in our country today, the low and close to no income need of so many people. To think that as a nonprofit, like Richard had told me today, to walk into an apartment building and have a woman come to tears to say to him, I've never had a kitchen. I've never had a kitchen like this. And feel that they're going to have some hope and some life. So I congratulate all of you for the work you do. And from what I know, the little I know, I'm sure many days it's an uphill struggle. You've got all kinds of regulations that are constantly changing. Even in the presidential election from both sides, affordable housing is a huge, difficult issue that goes on. So to think that you get knocked down, you get disappointed, you get turned back, the funding doesn't come through, the deal doesn't come through, the building, is not going to be available. Whatever it is that are your setbacks, just like on this swim here. I didn't make it 4 times. And each one, 51 hours this time, 48 hours this time. How about the training? Isn't that what all of our endeavors are about? 12 hours training one day, 14 hours training the next day, 16 hours the next day. And all of those failures were journeys. They were journeys of discovery. They were journeys of pride. What the ancient Greeks always said, it's life not about the destination, it's about the journey. I heard from so many people from around the world after each failure, they would send me the Teddy Roosevelt Arena speech, and I'm sure you all know it, so to grossly paraphrase it, Teddy Roosevelt said, you go ahead. You sit in your comfortable armchair and you be the critic while this guy gets in the ring. And this guy suffers, and he gets pummeled, and he falls to the canvas. And he's bloodied and he's dirtied, but he gets his grit together and he gets back up. And he gets pummeled again and he falls, but he gets back up again. Teddy Roosevelt says, every time, I'd rather be this guy than the cold, timid soul who sits on the sidelines. And that's what this event was all about, not giving up, getting back up, getting more intel, getting more ways to tap the human spirit, more science. And we're the team who deserved finally to make it across. And now that brings me to my second point that you all can relate to. And many people, even though this sport is so eccentric, nobody wants to swim from Cuba to Florida. I don't recommend it myself. Team. So here I am. If you had a drone camera follow me for these 53 hours, you'd only see one set of arms coming out. And all those training swims, all those attempts, only one set of arms. But right over there, 17 feet from me, so about the edge of this stage here, is the head of my expedition, Bonnie. For all those training hours, all those hundreds and hundreds of hours, Bonnie pees right over the side of the boat because she will never let me take a breath 53 times a minute this way without seeing her there, my soldier. She's there to protect my life and to make the deepest decisions for me if it comes down to it. And right behind her is a genius mathematician named John Bartlett, the navigator, because here's the conundrum. You're trying to swim 110.86 miles, as it turned out, GPS point to GPS point, due north. And Havana down here to Key West up here, and squeezing through the Yucatan Channel right here is the most powerful current on planet Earth, the mighty Gulf Stream. And before over here, it turns north along the Atlantic seaboard. Between Cuba and Florida, that Gulf Stream is some 85 miles wide. So you can figure it. As soon as you leave the Cuba coast, you're in it. And way later, 2 days swimming nonstop later, never allowed to touch the boat, never allowed to get out on the boat. You can tread water and take food, take electrolyte liquids, but you can never touch any person or boat. Way up here, just as you're going to reach Florida, you get out of that stream, and that you're in it all the time, and that stream is flowing hard. 6.6 miles an hour average going due east this way as you're trying to swim due north this way. And there's no other landing point. You miss Key West a bit this way, you're out into the Gulf of Mexico in the west. You miss it this way, you're out into the morass of the Atlantic Ocean. So that genius, John Bartlett, literally every 15 minutes is setting a different course. If I'm going strong, he communicates with Bonnie, then they're going to allow me to push up against the stream a little bit. If I'm weak, they're going to have to just let me get dragged by it. Now, what if you're in crisis, which you will be? You're going to have jellyfish stings, you're going to have shark sightings. Have I mentioned the sharks at all yet? Because they really are a protagonist of this story. These are the sharks of the tropics. They're the oceanic whitetips, the lemons, the tigers, 50 miles offshore, an animal may not have eaten for a week. Very possible with no reefs, no bait fish. And the marine biologists tell you these are intelligent animals. They know that the Homo sapiens is not their food. They will not come up and eat you whole. Although they do say, but if it's hungry enough, if he hasn't eaten in a week and an innocent swimmer goes by, making a little low-frequency vibration, yes, then they might come up and take a leg. You know, it's not that encouraging, really. So part of this team over here on this boat are 6 shark divers. How will I ever thank those guys to put my life ahead of theirs? So in the day, the clarity is wonderful. In the Gulf Stream, they can stand on the top of this boat, Voyager. They can see a mile out any dark body and go get them interested in something else. But at night, we don't use lights like this. Lights attract jellyfish, lights attract sharks. Unless there's a little moonlight, we go pitch black. And I'm swimming on the surface at about 2.2 miles an hour. They have resistance underwater, so they're under there with these 2 triangles of PVC piping with a hard nose ball on the end of it. We use no spear guns. We kill no animal on our watch. And if an animal starts thrashing with the back arched up toward me, looking aggressive, they'll take that ball and punch it in that sensitive ampullae of its snout and move it down and out a quarter mile, a half mile, get them interested in them. As I say, how am I ever going to thank those guys? I've tried. The box jellyfish emits the most potent venom that we know. There's no spider, there's no snake that can kill as efficiently as the little 1-inch square cube of the box jellyfish. It's a translucent blue with a 9 to 12 foot, very thin tentacles, so thin and wispy when it swipes across your hand or your lips, you feel it's as thin as a human hair. And that tentacle has on it hundreds of harpoons, and those harpoons whip to the skin and inject the poison into your central nervous system. When I swam in 2011 into a swarm of them, tentacles around the neck, around the bicep, across the back, I screamed to Bonnie, "Bonnie, help me! I'm on fire, help me! I can't breathe!" And I lived through that night. I don't know how. I don't want to sound braggartly to you today, but the doctors on board, ER doctors from the University of Miami, will tell you, I made it through that night on will. But now I'm weakened, and instead of really working north and making progress across that stream, I'm weakly being dragged east, east, east. And we had to call it at some point when land was no longer reachable. You know what I want to do is take you way back. I would take you back to childhood, because that's where this dream really was planted, way back in childhood. So I'll start by playing you my song. You'll understand. It doesn't always come out right, but it's reveille. Reveille, get up. Get up, don't miss the dawn, don't miss your dreams. And I was lucky. That ethic came into my life very young. I had a Greek father who was dramatic. Every day was an emotional exaltation for Aristotle's zenith naiad. He would wake us kids up, 3 o'clock in the morning, tears standing in his eyes, that thick accent of his. "Kids, I have just been to the ocean. It is a Rembrandt painting. It will change your lives. Hurry up. We must go see it. Dad, we have school in a few hours. We need to sleep." "I am your father, no? I am here to tell you the lessons of life. Lesson number 1, most important lesson of all, sleep is highly overrated. Get up." 20 minutes later, the whole family strolling at the ocean's edge, the amber moonlight from our ankles out till ever. It was a Rembrandt painting. It changed our lives. Well, on my 5th birthday, my father called me into the den, and over here on the desk, he had opened Webster's big, fat, unabridged dictionary. His hands were on the pages, tears in the eyes again, and he called to me, "Darling, you are coming here. I have been waiting for this day for you to turn 5. Because today, darling, I'm going to tell you the most important thing I will ever tell you. Come here." Your name, my name, the name of my Greek people. It is here in the bold black and white, the important book, the dictionary. Darling, you will go to your little preschool tomorrow. You will ask your little friends, is their name in the dictionary? No, they will tell you, no, you are the only one. Come here. I'm going to read for you. Huh? Naiad, girl or woman, champion swimmer. Darling, this is your destiny. Well, I didn't know what destiny was. I was only 5. But the word I heard that day was champion. I started walking with my shoulders a little bit higher. So as a kid, I did become, in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a good pool swimmer with Olympic dreams. And at age 9, I was standing on the beach with my French mother. My mother spoke with a thicker accent than my father, so, that's always entertaining at home. And I had just become, as millions of people worldwide had, sort of infatuated with Cuba. The Cuban Revolution broke when I was at age 9. And all of a sudden, that island we knew very well, right off our shore. My parents had danced salsa in the Hotel Nacional. It was forbidden to us. In one 24-hour period, we can't go there anymore. They can't come here anymore. And I was standing on the beach with my mother. I said, Mom, Cuba's out there somewhere, but where is it? I can't see it. And she said, well, it's this way. No, let's go here. It's more this way. It's just across the horizon here. As a matter of fact, Havana is so close. You little champion swimmer, you could almost swim there. What? Swim there? That's a phrase that got lodged in the back of my imagination. The Olympic trials came. As a teenager, I didn't know that my talent as an athlete was to be going over the curvature of the earth with a steel-trap mind. As a sprinter, after 8 years, 4:30 in the morning, 1,000 sit-ups every night, never 999, my chances were slim to none. One more 100-meter backstroke. And this night, I'm either going on to the Olympic trials or I'm going on to the rest of my life. I'm walking down the pool deck with the weight of the world on my shoulders, all that sacrifice. My brother and sister gave up their dreams. My dreams are so big. A friend came and shook me. She said, what's going on? You look like you're in a daze. Why aren't you in a sharp focus? This is the most important race of your career. And I started in with the sacrifice. She said, stop it. You're not in the past looking back. You're still in it. I know your chances are slim. Why don't you get up there, though? Why don't you get up there and blast off with your shoulders and your heart? And when you touch that wall, don't look up. Don't look how you finished. Close your eyes, close your fists, and say it and mean it. I couldn't have done it a fingernail faster. She said, you do it that way. You mean it, you won't have any regrets. So that's what I did. I didn't leave a fingernail's effort in that pool. When I touched, I had no idea where I finished. I closed my eyes, I closed my fists, I said it, I meant it. I couldn't have done it a fingernail faster. And I didn't make it. I walked across the pool deck that night for the last time. I remember taking my heavy swim bag and put it down on the deck, and I looked up at the stars. And I said to myself these exact words: no matter where you go, no matter what you do every day of your life, so you can't do it a fingernail better. You'll have no regrets. So to spring forward, maybe my father was right. It was my destiny. In my 20s, which were the 1970s, I was the best open water swimmer in the world. Held the record for men and women around Manhattan Island. It's a blue planet, so we, band of us, used to swim all over the world. But there was always Cuba. Those were all these swims, all to be respected. Cuba was different. Nobody had ever made it, and plenty had tried. We put it together. 1978, I'm 28 years old. I marched down to the Havana shore. Jellyfish, sharks, get out of my way. But the weather is capricious too. From the Galapagos Islands around the north shore of South America, from under the Dominican Republic, from the Atlantic Gyre. Is that a train going by? From the Atlantic gyre out here, many factors change. You get a great prediction from the Miami Hurricane Center, and 8 hours later, it all flips on its head, and sure enough, that's what happened in 1978. We started out in a dead calm. 8 hours later, we're in an 8 to 10 foot sea. If my head is here breathing, we're talking about a wave that's breaking above the top of the screen here. The shark divers can't see fins underwater or above the water. I can't see the boat. I can't see where I'm going. I'm not navigating anymore. We had to give it up at 42 hours, 49 minutes. Came back together in 79 again. Never got a chance to go that year. The winds blew out of the east hard for 91 straight days. We lost that opportunity. Came back in 1980. Didn't get a chance to go. Couldn't get visas to go into Cuba. And now I'm getting offers from the wide world of sports and from National Public Radio and others to go into sports broadcasting, sports journalism. And I'm not going to complain about those next 30 years, 30 to 60, following the best in the world, pursue their excellence. But to tell you the truth, right at the end of those 30 years, age 60, I started to feel the malaise of a spectator. I was chasing other people who were chasing their dreams. I wasn't chasing my own dreams anymore. And I got that Mary Oliver poem that you saw in the film there, and I'm sure all of you know it, but those last two lines, I said that I recited those lines maybe 1,000 times. And they go, tell me, what is it you plan to do with this one wild and precious life of yours? And that was the day. I said, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go chase that dream again, the dream that is going to make me drill down to every ounce of potential I am. Physically, emotionally, psychologically, we put it together and we failed. Came back the next year, trained hard again, had more intel, and we failed again. That was the box jellyfish time. Came back for a fourth time, failed again, and now the whole world called this event impossible. But not us, not our team, because we don't quit. Came back a fifth time. I'm standing on the Havana shore, and that horizon looked farther away than it's ever looked before. I took the leap of faith. I'm singing my songs all day long. John Bartlett's coming out of his navigation cabin with thumbs up. He likes the configuration of the stream, the tidal currents, everything. On that second night, so now I've been swimming for more than 45 hours, I started to hallucinate freely. I saw the Taj Mahal floating over here. Just grand, really. But I wasn't swimming. Then I got engaged with the 7 dwarfs who were marching under me on the place. So again, I wasn't swimming. And finally, Bonnie blew the signal for shark to get me back going. When you don't swim, you're going east. And she said, "Come here. You got to tell me what you see. Feather up. Look that way." I said, "Bonnie, it's a black canvas. I don't see a thing." She said, "It's important. It's crucial. What do you see?" I feathered up more. Oh, wait a second. There's a light. There's a thin light. A band of light going like this right across the horizon. It's the third day. The sun's coming up, and you know how we all feel about the sunrise. Sunrise brings us hope. Bonnie's not a crier, but she choked up, and she said, "That light, that's better than the sun. Those are the lights of Key West." It was another 15 hours of swimming, but now the whole team, 40 of us, we all knew we were going to make it. We put our heads down. We did our jobs. 2 hours from shore, bright blue skies, palm trees in the distance. I asked John and Bonnie to bring the whole team here and the flotilla of boats. And I said to them, I guess I'm going to stumble up on that beach pretty soon. I guess somebody's going to take my picture. But don't you ever forget my team. We did this together. We made history together. So as I said in the very beginning tonight, that was 11 years ago. Our team is still tight. We meet every year. We have our anniversary. And now, just this summer, I turned 75. I'm still a badass. But if you want to get real, I'm clearly a lot closer to the end than I am to the beginning. And I'm telling you, I think about one day there'll be that last breath. And I know I'm going to say, I'm not going gentle into that good night. But I'll at least be able to say to myself, you know what? Wish you had more time. Wish you knew more people, could help more people, could go more places, have more experiences. But at least I can say I did it all. So I just couldn't do it a fingernail better. Thanks for listening.
Should be on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm just going to take 2 minutes of your time. I really, first of all, thank you for that very inspiring speech, and thank you for delivering that message here to us tonight. We have concluding our program now. I wanted to thank all of our sponsors. I wanted to thank the speakers here tonight. They did a fantastic job. Yes, give them applause. Thank you. I'd like to thank all of our guests as well, all of the attendees. I would also like to thank the NHPF family and the Operation Pathways family for all the hard work they do. And in particular, I want to thank the folks who really put a lot of hard work in this week, actually the last couple of months. I want to thank Mary Jane for her hard work. And I want to thank Don. Why don't you stand up? Eve, Christine, Thalia. They make all this possible. And then finally, I want to thank Tom Vaccaro. He's not here physically, but he's here in spirit. And we know Tom is getting better, and we're looking forward to seeing him soon. Thank you all, everyone. Oh, I left out the last. The best part is there's refreshments and cocktails in the palm court. So.
Exactly. It's on already. So as soon as everybody gets out here, okay, you want to stand in order to get the